tonight is an evening about learning how to future-proof your home, about energy efficiency, and anything green to do with housing. So we have two speakers tonight. The first speaker will be Shane Wolf, and our second speaker will be Paul Gerard. Shane Wolf is from Future-Proof My Building, and Paul Gerard is from Adipop Homes, and I'm just going to introduce Shane Wolf here for you, just so you get a sense for who he is. So Shane Wolf is a professional engineer. He's an accredited professional in LEED. He's a certified energy auditor, a certified thermographer, and very recently he also became a local Whitehorse-based entrepreneur. Yay for us. While working as a consultant specializing in commissioning from a small consulting firm in Saskatoon, Shane realized that there are a lot of myths about green building that are preventing the industry from growing. This inspired him to create the concept of future-proofing. And then he wrote his book, How to Future-Proof Your Home, a guide to building with energy intelligence in cold climates. And he also built a website called futureproofmybuilding.com. For those of you who are here tonight, Shane will be giving out an e-book version of his book. And if you haven't actually signed up for it, there's draw cards and a sign-up sheet at the very back of the room, so you can do that while we have a break. So Shane's goal is to help make green building simple for the general public and help make sustainable construction the standard in the industry through the online web platform he has been working on. Shane is originally from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, but now he lives and he works here in Whitehorse. So let's give a nice warm welcome to Shane.
Thanks, Martha. Thank you, everyone, for coming. As Martha said, there's a lot of myths out there and misconceptions about green building, and there's a lot of new careers opening up and opportunities in this area, and I wanted to basically make it easier for people to be able to understand and gravitate to this because I think it's the future, and I'm going to show you why. So before I talk, I'm an engineer, and engineers are paid to give specific advice. So I can only speak in generalities because I don't know anything about your home or your project, but I can speak to the science. So a lawyer with Apex advised me to give a disclaimer at the beginning of every talk so that I don't get myself into any kind of trouble.
Can everyone hear back here?
Yeah?
Okay, if you can, just let them know.
So my journey started, I worked for Saskatchewan Government Insurance. I had a short-lived career in IT. I realized right away that I didn't like it. And one day I was sitting at the top of this building here in Regina, and it was minus 30 degrees outside, and the sun was just beaming in on me, and I thought, why isn't this building covered in solar panels? And little did I know at the time that's what most people think about when they think about green building. They think solar panels, oh, that's green. But really, when you actually start learning about this, as I did, this ignited a fire within me, and I started studying it. And I realized actually renewable energy is most cost-effectively implemented after you actually save energy, and I'm going to explain that later. But basically, what I also learned was that I was trying to figure out what to do, and I realized buildings are the biggest source of greenhouse gas pollution. They're the biggest users of energy in our society, but they can actually be built to produce more than they consume. So here's the biggest problem, which is also the biggest solution. And they're everywhere that people are. So I thought, you know what, I'll never not have a job if I get into this field and I can make a huge impact with my engineering background. So I started working for Honeywell shortly after that. I worked as an automation technician. I worked in all kinds of buildings of all different types, commercial, even a couple industrial. Then I worked for a company called Integrated Designs in Saskatoon. I was a project manager specializing in commissioning. And in case, LEED is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is basically the green building standard in North America and all over the world. It's very broad. It covers many different areas. But I'm also a certified energy auditor, a certified thermographer, and I've taken the Passive House training, which I'll speak briefly to. So basically, the last time I was out there, I was working with a modular home building company, helping them optimize their homes and start up their plant. But I've worked on, if you watch the World Junior Hockey Championships in 2009, I commissioned that building. I commissioned a couple hospitals as well as a huge multiplex, a bunch of LEED projects, and you can read So I also commissioned the water pumping station for the city of Saskatoon and a water pumping station for a potash mine. So futureproofmybuilding.com is basically green buildings poorly understood. So I wrote this book hoping that I could get this information, condense it, make it really easy for people, and talk about a cold climate, because most of the information out there is for the States. It's for a much warmer climate, it's for a much bigger market, and we've based what we do up here essentially on what people do in much warmer climates, which is foolish. And my goal really is to help these people who do all these obscure things for the public to market themselves and get their services out there better and get out these revolutionary technologies. One of them we brought here tonight. It's called Energy Wall Systems. So your home can be more valuable, more comfortable, safer at approximately the same cost. And what most people don't think of is this is actually an investment. This is like the only real safe investment. Most people probably lost some money recently with the way that the stock market is going, and that sucks, but that's the way that the world works. But if you do things right, I want people to realize that this is like a very safe investment that has so many benefits. I'm going to explain them. And it's something that'll gain value over time. You know, give or take the housing bubbles and stuff like that, you're always going to be gaining value with a home. And this is something that is common all over Europe. They actually take into consideration if building A uses more energy than building B, it's worth more because your bills are less. And they're actually looking at this in Edmonton as well, and I would like to see it all over North America. Because if you have something that costs you less money to operate, it's worth more, right? So the way to accomplish this is really quite simple. Reduce the amount of energy, the amount of water that you're using through super insulation, better appliances, your habits, your awareness. Reuse energy through technology such as heat recovery ventilators or drain water heat recovery. And then it becomes cost effective to generate electricity through solar, or generate energy through solar, wind, solar thermal, air source heat pumps, that kind of thing. If you want to really remember it, it's the same as what you would do with materials. You reduce, reuse, recycle. It's the same principles. So this is the Saskatchewan Conservation House. This was built in between 1977 and 1979. This was the world's first ultra-low energy building. Two of my mentors and friends actually were key figures in this, and this is how I learned this information, was from one of them. But the important thing to understand about this building, they made some mistakes, they learned some stuff, but what they realized has become the foundation for green building around the world. And in the 1990s, a German physicist by the name of Dr. Wolfgang Feist, he created what's called the Passive House Standard. And essentially, if you want a simplified understanding, the Passive House Standard is 90% less energy usage than the average Canadian home for between 5 to 10 extra % cost. And right now, I took the Passive House training last March, or no, 2 years ago in March. So at that time, there was 40,000 certified Passive Houses around the world. So I'm assuming there's quite a few more now. I don't know the actual number, but it's growing in popularity. This is the home of my mentor, Dr. Rob Dumont, in Saskatoon. When he built this house in 1992, it was the most insulated home in the world. It had R60 walls. It cost him less than $10,000 extra to do that. And it doesn't need a furnace. If you want to understand how much 3,300 square feet of home takes to heat, it's the same as turning on these 4 burners. So that's about 5 kilowatts of energy. How many people in here think that they could keep even one floor of their home heated at minus 34 with their stove on? One guy. So that kind of speaks for itself. That's the same amount of heat as a small natural gas fireplace as well, about 17,000 BTUs. But the way he did this is he built a double wall, which I've got illustrated here. I don't really want to talk too much about double wall because it's a lot of labor, and Paul is going to speak to a much quicker, much more cost-effective solution for here in Whitehorse and in all cold climates. So what we can do is we can reduce our energy dependence and our bills. We can protect ourselves from energy price fluctuations, which we all know exist. We can increase our comfort and health. We can keep money in our local economy by paying people in every single city to do good work for things that we need anyway, which is a huge thing. We can build a more sustainable society, improve our long-term security and prosperity, and reduce our environmental impact while demonstrating leadership. If you own a business or you own a home and people see that you've done this and they are comfortable in your home and they come into your business or they see this, you're actually demonstrating, hey, I'm a leader in this. I'm doing my part for the environment, for society, for myself even. And I think that that's a huge thing. Monkey see, monkey do, right? So how are we going to achieve this? Awareness. The fact that you guys are all here right now learning this is huge. You're going to walk away from this and you're going to have a new body of knowledge. And that shifts your behavior. But the more that we improve the efficiency, like we can do this in new homes, we can do it in renovations. And by understanding how we can do this, we can actually make shifts. So this affects everyone. I mentioned slightly earlier, but like the cost of utilities is bound to rise. And if you don't do this right from the beginning when you're building new, it's going to cost you a lot more to do it after the fact because you've got to undo certain things and then redo. And it's great to just plan these things from the beginning. But the thing is that a growing population means that there's higher demand on the utility, which means that they need to spend more money on infrastructure, which means that there's going to be higher taxes or higher utility charges. And that gets passed on to the customer. So imagine if everyone was reducing their energy needs by 60 to 90%, we would see less of price shocks down as we grow as a society. And like this just makes sense here because the average temperature at any given time in Whitehorse is negative 0.1 degrees Celsius. So you think in your home, you're at 22 degrees, most people leave their homes at 22 degrees at any given time. You're heating 22 degrees pretty much all the time. But if you have a super energy efficient, well-insulated home, your body is actually giving off heat. Your appliances, your lights, everything is gathering heat, so you barely need anything, and that's how Rob could heat his house with just the same amount of heat from a stove. And like, if you don't believe me, just test. It doesn't take long to figure out if you don't have your furnace running or you don't have the heat going, that your home will get cold. This is a safety thing in a climate like this that we should all be thinking about. So the reason for this is because there wasn't until recently an energy code. Yukon is actually doing very well in this regard because they actually implemented the energy code. In Saskatchewan, they still have not implemented it. It's been in the works for over 2 years. And the Yukon was one of the first to do this. But like, if you go and buy yourself a car, you know approximately how much it's going to cost you to run that car. You know what the fuel mileage is. You can figure that all out. But the same thing doesn't really exist across Canada for homes. And you need to know your EnerGuard number, but to really understand this. But the thing is that even so, I believe that we can do much, much better than the National Building Code, because a building code is simply a minimum. And if you know to do better than the minimum, you can just ask a contractor and they'll build what you ask for, because contractors will do what you ask for, but not more. So why don't people do this as a standard? And the reason is because we're not really designed to think long term. That's not how we evolved our awareness. And our world revolves around money. We need to have money to do things. If we don't have money, we can't accomplish things. But like I said before, your home is an investment, right? So if you're spending money on something, it's something that you need. And it's, like I said, it's secure. What happens if you put your money into the stock market instead? You're taking a chance, you might get a better return. But, like I said, this is a safer investment in my opinion. And the reason we don't think like this, like the reason that we're not really doing this is our economy is not built to have things that last a long time. If you look at this bridge, I'm from Saskatoon, this bridge was built in 1907. They actually just demolished it in January. But the same type of thinking wasn't used back a long time ago. This is a bridge from Rome, 134 AD. It's still in use today. Now, the people who built this bridge, they didn't have better engineers, they didn't have better materials. What they had was a better set of priorities. They decided, we're gonna build this bridge, and it's gonna last, and it's gonna keep providing value for a long, long period of time. And I believe that that's the way that we can actually become more sustainable and build more value into our society. Come on. So what is debt? This is the US National Debt Clock. I took this image on April 23rd at 4:15 p.m. Now, debt doesn't stop the United States from chugging ahead in its economy. They still have debt, and they actually create about $3 billion a day to cover their debt. And right now, at the time of this, there was $18.2 trillion in debt. How much is a trillion? Well, let's say 1,000 seconds is 16.67 minutes. A billion seconds, though, is nearly 32 years. How many times have you thought about a billion and considered that a billion seconds was at 32 years? By the time you're ready to retire, you're just over 2 billion seconds old. So these are huge, huge numbers that we're talking about, but a trillion seconds is actually closer to 32,000 years. So if the United States was to pay back $1 per second of that debt, it would take approximately 577,000 years. Okay, so don't let any kind of idea about money stop you. Money is abundant, it's everywhere. We can use it as a tool. And just so that I don't make the United States look bad, Canada has nearly $1 trillion worth of debt itself, which would take 31,240 years as of April 23rd, which is really not a big deal. It is, but... So, like I said, money is a tool. Let's use it to build a better world. We can use it to pay people locally to do better work for things that last, rather than things that end up in a landfill. And I mentioned Passive House earlier. It costs about 10% more to achieve 90% better energy efficiency. Paul's going to speak to how he figured out how to do that for much less. But like I said, when you're investing in this, you're paying yourself rather than the utility company. You are saving money every month. And you're using your money essentially to set yourself free, because if the power does go out in the middle of winter time, you're going to be happy that your home stays warm automatically, right? So if you want to understand this from a scientific perspective, this is the easiest way I can think to explain it. What we currently build is a paper cup when we should be building thermoses. Think about it. What keeps your coffee hot or your cold drink colder? If it's cold out, you put on a sweater or a jacket or a parka. You don't run around continually to stay warm. It's the same analogy. We're burning fuel to stay warm when you're running, rather than just keeping that heat in, keeping that cool in. And if you think of a home as a system, what it really is a system. You spend more on insulation, you can actually save on the size of heating equipment, and you can actually shrink the size of the heating equipment so you actually have more living space. You can eliminate your need for air conditioning altogether in a climate like this. So you're paying approximately the same cost, but you have a much lower operating cost, and that's how it pays you back. And the way to know that it was done right is to get someone to check it out. Someone like a third party. A third party comes in, tests it out. All of the building standards, Energy Star, 2000, Passive House, LEED, EnerGuide for new homes, they all do a blower door test. They all model the home in software so that you can tell approximately how much energy is being used. And that actually helps the builder understand what they could do better next time. But in commercial building, commissioning is the process of doing that. It's much more complicated because there's much more complex systems involved. Retro commissioning is for existing buildings, and energy auditing is for existing buildings where you're actually determining the best ways to find savings and paybacks. Retro commissioning is more about testing the old systems and making sure that they're optimized and that they work properly. So here is an energy scorecard. I got this from the CBC a couple years ago. But if you look, can everyone see my mouse here? If you look at Canada, we're second last in the industrialized nations in terms of energy efficiency. And I pointed this arrow here at our buildings. Russia is like the only country that's doing worse than us in this regard. And this is a function of our climate, obviously. It's not just the fact that it's mainly due to our climate, I would say. But the important thing to understand about this graph is even though it doesn't look great here, this whole area here, this is untapped opportunity. This is money, this is jobs, this is opportunity. If you're in the construction industry or if you're in some of the other industries I'm going to show you in a bit, this is money, this is the future of the economy, especially in a time when oil is $30 a barrel. So, begin with the end in mind. This is Stephen Covey's second habit of highly effective people. Know where you want to go, plan. We did a financials training this morning. They talked about budgeting. You know, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to end up where you want to be. So, here is a graph of natural gas versus oil price in terms of the heating equivalent, so million BTUs. And as you can see, the cost of oil is significantly higher at the end of 2014 compared to natural gas. But there's some big jumps here. And these jumps are due, 2008 was the financial crash. 2005 here, this was Hurricane Katrina. But you could see around 2008, it basically went low, and that's because of fracking. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit. But this is an artificially low price, in my opinion. We're not paying the real cost of natural gas for heating. And it's not used here, but in Saskatchewan, this is the reason, partially why I'm here is because the heating is so low, people don't seem to care. They don't see the long-term implications of it. But because heating is expensive here, it makes much more economic sense to future-proof your home here. So at February 9th, when I took this graph, I did a Google search. The price of gas was $2.06 per million BTUs, which is really, really low. And I mentioned fracking. I don't know how many people here have seen Gasland or know about fracking. Okay, that's good. This is a practice that has come under a lot of scrutiny because it hasn't been demonstrated to be exactly safe. And I personally don't believe that we should put water systems and wildlife in jeopardy so that we can have cheap energy for a very short period of time when there's clearly better ways to save energy that lasts very long and actually produce more jobs. So heating oil is used extensively here, but that has consequences too. How many people have thought about the Horizon explosion that happened in the Gulf a few years ago in the last month? People have this tendency to forget these types of things, but they happen, and this is still having an effect in the world. And I personally don't want to see anything like this happen again. And like people might say, well, that happened in the Gulf of Mexico, but it happens in Canada too. We don't hear about it. This is a report I saw on Facebook from Global News. I'm going to bet that it probably wasn't on the news more than one day. But basically, the report said 37 years of oil spills in Alberta. I put an arrow at the bottom here because I know it's not legible, but it says there was an average of 2 crude oil spills a day every day for the past 37 years in Alberta. How many people knew that? I don't want to read this, but it 20.
How big of a spill is that?
Just wait. This is the most offensive part. Anything under 2,000 liters, or approximately 12.5 barrels, was not counted in that spillage. So, this is a serious issue, and it's not reported in the way that it should be. And if you were to read this, it says 28,668 crude barrels spilled in total, plus 31,000 spills of just about any other substance you could think of putting in a pipeline from salt water to liquid petroleum. So there are spills of all kinds. So even if you don't care about oil spills, even if you don't care about improving the economy, even if you don't care about helping make utility rates lower for yourself and for others, what happens in an emergency if the power goes out? These are pictures from Quebec in the ice storm. I think it was 1998 that this happened. This was the biggest natural disaster in Canadian history until the floods in Calgary a couple of years ago. But you think about in Quebec, the power goes out, and because of an ice storm, the ice storm happens around 0 degrees Celsius, but the temperature doesn't go to minus 20 or 30. It goes down to minus 5 or 10 after something like that. In Saskatchewan, I started noticing this, and it was like 0, minus 20s next day. In fact, 2 years ago when they had the Grey Cup, the week leading up to the Grey Cup in Regina, it was minus 20 to 25 every day. The day of Grey Cup, 0, back to minus 25. So this is a serious issue. I don't want to scare people. This isn't a fear-mongering campaign. But we have climate change. Everyone can see that the Yukon is not normally this warm. And it's something that we need to think about. And this is a good reason to future-proof your home. Climate change is affecting the world. Whatever your beliefs on climate change are, I don't even care. There's flooding all over Saskatchewan. In the Yukon, there's permafrost melting. It's starting to. This has serious effects on us. And I don't want to take too much time on this point, but I used to be on the Environment and Sustainability Committee for the Association of Professional Engineers in Saskatchewan. And we actually have had to go back and go, how are we going to get engineers to deal with these types of events? Because now we can't design buildings and infrastructure to the 100-year floodplain, because that's a useless measure. We need to go to the 200 or 500-year floodplain, because we don't even know what's going to happen with regard to the weather anymore. So, this is Albert Einstein. I really like him. We can't solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. I completely agree with this. So, when you think about that statement, are we building for the long term? Are these row houses that we seem to pump out, are they going to last as long as these older houses that you see in Europe, you see like in places in Quebec? Are they going to be around in 100, 200 years? Are we creating the best possible future for our children, for ourselves right now? So why don't we build resilient sustainability into the system? This has a lot to do with our attitudes. This is the way society has conditioned us. I really like this quote because I think it sums it up. It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it. And I have friends who work in the oil industry because I went to the University of Regina, and I've had a few battles online with them about what is a better way to move the society forward. But I won't get into that. The thing that's really key about this slide is understanding what human beings need. Okay, we need food. Could we do it better than these factory farms? Yes, I think we could. It provides our needs, but we could still do better. We need water, but if we put our water in danger for things like fracking or because we're not being careful with our resources, we can cause problems. We need shelter, but are we building shelter as well as we can? No, we could do it better. We need energy, but is energy actually coming from good sources? Well, we can actually change the way we get energy. I'm really happy that Whitehorse and lots of the Yukon gets energy from hydro, which is a clean way of generating power. But we can also grow food in our homes. We don't often think about that. And this place is so landlocked, it's so isolated, it makes sense to start growing food up here. And actually we've talked to people who are interested in this, and I think it's a fantastic idea. All of these things, these needs, meeting these needs with your home, this to me is the definition of future-proof. This is what I based what I'm doing on. So this system keeps us trapped in a sense. Until we meet our needs like this, we're running on a treadmill. We're hamsters on a wheel. And what I said earlier about using your money as a tool to set yourself free, there's a great book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the one key point that I got out of it, they said poor people work for money, wealthy people make money work for them. And that's a key thing with investments.